Hey, how's it going? And today we're just taking a quick look at the scene graph. This is the latest and greatest thing that the mad scientists at Epic Games have come up with. And this is for Unreal Editor for Fortnite. And at this time, this is July 2024, it's an experimental feature. And so I don't think it's working 100%. If we come into Unreal Editor for Fortnite, if you go into the templates, into the sample projects, there's this one here. Let me see if I can just exit out and show you. So if we come into Unreal Editor for Fortnite and we go to the feature examples, you'll see there's this one called Prefabs, and that's supposed to be an introduction to it. So I've already opened up a instance of this, so it's right here. So let's take a look at this. I don't think it's working because I can't get it to publish, and it's something about it that the server doesn't like. I don't know what it doesn't like exactly, but let's just take a quick look at this. So the nearest I can tell, this is going to be their system for creating games and projects in the metaverse, whatever that turns out to be. It's introducing some new terminology. It talks about components, entities, the prefab, and I assume the screen graph to be this whole concept of components, entities, and prefabs, and they're all kind of built on each other. So in this project, all I can do is go into this level. So let me hit F11, and it's bookmarked. So if you hit 1, it takes you here, and so it shows you that this is each one of these is beneath it is an example. So here it says this is a prefab essentially, and it's a basic hierarchy of entities and mesh components. And here it's the same thing, but now it has a light component added. And here it's the same thing, but it has a VXF particle system component, and then the last one has a verse component added. So as you'll see, you can start with a prefab, which is a collection of entities and meshes. What is an entity? You know, I think that's an unfortunate term just because I have this flashback to this movie called The Entity, and I remember watching it a long time ago and it kind of disturbed me. And there's some scenes in there that were pretty uncomfortable. And so when I think of entity, this is the first thing that comes into my mind. So I don't know. I wish there was another word for that. Here is essentially what it's supposed to look like, and I can't get this to play. If I hit 2, we can bookmark here, and here's where they've added a verse component, but I don't see anything happening. So it's not like Unreal Engine yet where we can simulate in the editor. As far as I can tell, the only way we're going to get this to see this swaying is if I'm not sure what we have to do to get it to sway. And then overrides allow you to customize prefabs so they end up looking different. So every time you create a prefab and you drag it into the scene, it creates a new instance of it. It's a template that can be duplicated. So what is an entity? An entity, seriously, is just what I consider to be a null object. It's a container, it's a placeholder. It's really nothing. It's just this invisible thing. I think that's why they call it an entity, because it's just this invisible thing that's there, and it's waiting for you to put components in it. And what are components? Well, components are just assets and actions that you can add to an entity. And then you can put, everything can be nested, so you can put entities inside of entities, and then components go inside of entities. And so you have this incredible nesting that goes on. And then that whole thing of all those entities combined, all those entities parented and child to each other like a skeleton almost. The first entity is the parent, and that controls all the children beneath it. So it's really an incredible parent-child system, and the parents are essentially called entities, and the components inside the entities, that's what make things work. And then the whole thing together is called a prefab. So it's all this new terminology, and this whole concept of this components, entities, and prefabs is called a scene graph. And this is supposed to give you an example of it, but it doesn't really work. It's unfortunate. And here it says, pushing prefabs use and reuse, this entire village was built with highly reused meshes inside of prefabs. Go ahead and explore it. So that's this. So this is the wave of the future. This is pretty cool. It's just their way of doing things. And this is, let me F11 out of here. This is, see if I've tried to play and see, hey, I was getting a warning. I don't see it anymore. Let me see if I can, get it to hook up. I don't know what happened, but it wasn't connecting, and now it seems to be connecting. See what's going on the Fortnite side of things. Maybe it'll work this time. Oh, it looks like it might work. So one thing I did notice about this, I'll show you too, is because it's experimental, you can't publish it, which I think discourages people from actually using it. So at this point, it is truly experimental, where I wouldn't put anything prefab in my game right now, just because I think it would mess it up. Now, the last time I came in, I was just sitting here forever waiting for it to load up. I'm trying to jump into, I'd like to jump back into here. So to enable this whole thing, you just come up here to project settings here, and you have to check this box to make it experimental. And I'll be doing a tutorial pretty shortly about trying to add verse components, but I'm still researching it. There's some things I don't fully understand yet, and so I'm still making my way through all this. This is brand new. This is brand new that they've come up with. So if we come in here to light posts, this is a prefab that they're talking about, and then you'll see here these are entities. Those little, it starts with this kind of one here, the default one here, and you'll see that each one has components in it. So they call these entities, and then all these entities are basically have a parent-child relationship. They're in a hierarchy, and then every entity has components in it. And you click here to add components, and you right-click here to add entities. So it's just a nesting system, really, and the top one is the parent, and it controls everything beneath it. So that's kind of the long and the short of it, the whole thing. Now let's see if this actually works. So let me hit play. Oh, looks like it might work. It wasn't working before. I don't know what got it to work. Okay, so here we are. Oh, so now everything seems to be working. So here is this light swaying, and that's kind of a weird swaying. That's but that's being driven by the verse component, and they show you the code for that. So this is what the future of Unreal Editor for Fortnite is going to look like. All this stuff here, and if you come up here, it is pretty cool looking. I mean, it really is. So they have these everywhere now. So once you create one of these prefabs, you just drag them into the scene and see how you can just, they call it iteration through instantiation. And there's just all this, these are just dragged into the scene, all these prefabs. So once you build one, you just pop them in all over the place. And then like they say here with overrides, you can customize them, because you can add components or change things about them so they don't all look or act exactly the same. So anyway, let me jump out of here real fast, and let's just take a look at the verse code here. If we come into the Verse Explorer, here's the component here. Let me see if I can get in here. And this is the verse code. Now it's giving me error messages saying that it's not, that experimental's not set, but it is set. So I think that's normal for right now. But this is like the verse code, and there's this whole section in here follows the life cycle. So these components, one thing is that they have a life cycle associated with them. And so if we come in here and on the online documentation, you'll see it talks about the component lifetime here. Initialized, added a scene, begin simulation, in simulation, removing from scene, uninitializing. And so these are different points at which you can affect the code or the component. And there's all this things coming. I'm in the process of trying to work on an example. I'm trying to get a component to come into existence, like spawn because this is going to be one of the big things coming, right? You can spawn and remove entities with verse, but so far I haven't got this to work yet, so I'm still exploring that, and I'll post a video once I do. So anyway, this is just a quick update, a quick look at the scene graph and the future of where things are kind of going with verse. So thanks for stopping by, and I'll talk to you next time.